Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let me try that again. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
All right. So we're going to be energetic today, right? Because one of the things that I work with people on is helping them grow their brains. My background is in mental health counseling, and so the more energy you have and the more energy you put into things, the more your brain is in the mode to be able to learn. So welcome. I know that we have 50 people at this conference and there's 26 seats in each room, or 24, so there may be other people joining us. I hope so. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome. Today we're talking about helping your team endure hardship well. And the material that we're going to be talking about today comes from a book called Rare Leadership. So our title is Rare Leadership, Helping Your Team Endure Hardship Well. I am your trainer, Dawn Whitestone, and I am so glad to be with you here today for this breakout session. I like to ask 4 important questions. And those 4 important questions, and I ask these questions about everything all the time, they are who, why, how, and what. And I believe that when we ask those questions in that order, we are better able to look at the purposes of things and to be where we need to be, when we need to be there, and doing the things that we need to be doing. So we're going to start with who, and as Jeremy talked about, leaders go first. So it's not about me today, but I'm going to start, and then we're going to get to know each other a little bit in this session as well. So the first question is who. So I want to tell you a little bit about me and about the company Whitestone Professionals, which is the company that I started. So Whitestone Professionals helps individuals and organizations increase your influence, your impact, and hopefully your income by discovering and running the race that God has marked out for you. And I really believe in God, and I believe that God put each one of us here because He loves us and He has a purpose for our lives. And so we don't apologize for that, so I hope you're okay with that. Don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to impose my beliefs on you, but I am going to tell you where we're coming from. And that's a big part of that. And so it's important that you know that I believe that you are here and that you're important and that you have a purpose. Well, we serve our clients who are individuals and organizations through coaching, consulting, and training. So we like to say that we help people hit their target, hence our logo there. You notice those questions that I ask, who, why, how, and what. Well, that goes with purpose and plans and people and productivity. Who is all about people. Why is about your purpose. How is about the plans that we make. And what is all about productivity? What are we supposed to be doing? So when we know who we are, why we are here, how we're supposed to be operating, and what it is that we're doing, then we're able to hit our target. And the other thing I want you to know is we train skills. So anytime I do a training, I want you to walk away having not just learned something, left brain, head knowledge, but I want you to have done something that you can repeat, and so that you will have learned at least one skill by the time you leave the training that we are. And we're going to start doing that right now. And so we're going to do some brain prep. Have you ever wondered why a lot of speakers start with a joke or something funny? It's because they want to get you in the relational part of your brain, and that's right behind your right eyeball. And that part of your brain grows through joyful interactions. So if you can start laughing, or if you are appreciative, if you're thinking about someone you're thankful for, you get into the part of your brain where you're able to learn better and to receive new information. So I want to ask everybody right now, you can put down your pens. I want you to close your eyes, just because we focus better when we close our eyes. And I want you to think about somebody you appreciate. And I think about my daughter Reagan, who makes dinner for us every night. And when I get home from work, I walk in the door and I smell dinner is already on the stove. And I take a deep breath and I let it out, and I feel an incredible amount of relief, okay? So So I want you to think about your person. Who do you appreciate? Why do you appreciate them? What have they done? And as you're thinking about that person and why you appreciate them, how do you feel? How do you feel emotionally? And what does your body do? Do your shoulders relax? Do you take a deep breath and let it out and just feel that sense of relief? Do your toes uncurl? Do you feel warm in your chest or in your belly? Okay. Okay, now as you're thinking of that person and as you're noticing how it affects you to think about them, I want you to think of one word that describes that person. And when you've got that one word, open your eyes again. Okay. So how do you feel? Good? Y'all ready to learn? Okay, well I told you that we had those 4 questions and the first question was who. So real quickly, I want to hear from you. I want to know who's in the room today. So I'd like for you to just tell everybody your name. What is it that you do? Because we come from a variety of different backgrounds. And then just that one word, all right? So this doesn't have to take a very long time, but it allows us to start to get to know each other. So I'm gonna start in the back of the room with the person who matches me today in her blue suit. So, so your name, your who do you work for, and what's your one word, real quick?
My name is Jody Toner. I work for a workforce development board in Hillsborough County, Tampa. And compassion is my word.
Awesome. Over here.
My name is Pierre Price. I work for Career Source Central Florida, and my one word is love.
I'm Mimi Coonan. I work at Career Source Central Florida, and my word is supportive.
Awesome.
Pete Fulch, founder and president, Second Wind Fan Strong, professional speaker and trainer, and the word is support.
My name is Brenda Taylor. I'm a volunteer, and my one word is freedom.
Okay.
My name is Tina Dunlap. I work at Title Resources, an underwriter, and my one word is happy.
I'm Wayne Dunlap. I'm retired, so I appreciate everyone who's still working in Social Security. And my one word is joyful.
Great word. We're going to talk about joy a lot today. Okay.
Hello, my name is Tamika Thomas. I am the owner and founder of Meridian Christian Academy. My one word is love.
My name is Patricia Bent. I work at my church, and my one word is considerate.
My name is Beverly Henry Brown. I work with the Jobs Partnership of Florida, and my one word is encouragement.
Okay.
My name is Katia Palermo. I am from Brazil. I am living here in Florida to do my international degree, my master's degree. I have a Brazilian marketing consultant company, and I think my word is challenge.
Challenge. Ooh, I like that word too.
Hello, my name is Mary Ann Danner. I work for myself as a speaker, coach, and mentor. And my one word is caring.
Hi, my name is Hillary Sweeney. I work for myself also as a consultant in small businesses. And my one word is gentle.
I'm John Soblowski, business partner at Whitestone Professionals, and my word is joy.
My name is David Taylor. I'm a leader at Pinecastle United Methodist Church, and I am currently employed by Ubreak iFix as a customer experience manager. And my word is unselfish.
Okay.
My name is Carla Leake. I work at our church, the Bible Chapel DeBerry, and my word is supportive.
Okay.
My name is Dee Johnson. I work as a coach and trainer with Crew, and my one word was life.
Okay.
I'm Wayne Johnson. I'm a pastor. Been here on a temporary assignment as interim pastor for a church in DeBerry, and my one word is partner.
Awesome.
Partnership.
Awesome. Great. Now, how do you feel thinking about that person? Good. I mean, you've shared your one word. You know, it's a good thing, right? Do you feel a little more energized, a little more hopeful, a little more ready to learn and think about possibilities? Okay, that's the power of appreciation and Thanksgiving, and we're gonna talk more about that today. So let me share with you our objectives today. We've already talked about who. The next 3 questions are why, how, and what. So why team leadership? Why did you choose this breakout session? I'd like you to think about that. Why did you choose this particular breakout session? How does this work? And then what is it? We're going to provide an overview of rare leadership because we're talking about helping your teams endure hardship well, but to understand that, you have to understand the first 3 concepts, and you'll find out more about that. And we'll begin to practice some rare skills, which you already just did. Appreciation is a skill, and it is a skill that builds your brain and helps you to be more resilient and to endure hardship well. So we're going to talk about that and why that works neurologically. And then we're going to look at what's next. So now that you have new information and some new skills, what can you do with it? Okay? So we've talked about who, now let's talk about why. Why are we talking about leadership? Well, in his extensive research on emotional intelligence, Dr. Travis Bradbury discovered a disturbing trend. As you look at this graph, it shows there's a striking decline in relational skills for most leaders in corporate environments. So this is the norm, all right? Dr. Bradbury writes, once leaders get promoted, they enter an environment that tends to erode their emotional intelligence. They spend less time in meaningful interactions with their staff. It is so easy to get out of touch that leaders' EQ levels, their emotional intelligence levels, sink further. He says it is truly lonely at the top. However, as Jeremy was talking about, in this graph, the top performers are those with the highest EQs. So they're outliers. The companies that were most successful, the leadership, this went up as the position went up. So in other words, the companies with the best performance show the opposite trend. The higher the corporate position, the higher the emotional intelligence. So top performers have the greatest emotional intelligence, but the norm is low emotional intelligence. So if you are leading a company or you are leading an organization, the best thing you can do to keep that organization running well is to focus on emotional intelligence, people skills, the things that we're talking about today with servant leadership. Have you ever had a boss like this guy? Okay. So in the book Rare Leadership, Dr. Marcus Warner asks, what happens when leaders don't lead with emotional intelligence? Well, you may have experienced the destruction these kinds of leaders leave in their wake. Harvard Business Review coined the term sandbox leaders, and I'm going to read you a quote from that. They said in Harvard Business Review, in the past few months, we've seen childish attitudes reflected in the halls of government and corporate boardrooms across the country. Arrogance, pouting, tantrums, personal attacks, and betrayal of trust seem to be the order of the day. Situations at some large, well-known corporations demonstrate the kind of sandbox leadership that is all too prevalent right now. The timing could not be worse. The nation's current problems, as vast and overwhelming as they are, appear secondary to the whims of spoiled children, unwilling to play well together. At a time when we need solid, grounded leadership more than ever, we seem to be in short supply of adults who act like adults. Okay? When do you think that was written?
Yesterday.
Last fall.
This morning.
2011. That was written in 2011. Okay, 8 years ago. Has it gotten better or worse?
Worse.
Okay. So the reason that we have events like this and the reason that we're full is that things are getting worse, not better. All right? Dr. Warner says the number one lid on most leaders is emotional immaturity. John Maxwell who's considered a leadership guru, says leadership is influence, and he talks about the law of the lid, that leadership is the lid on any organization. So no organization can rise higher than the level of its leaders. But for leaders, most problems are almost always people problems. That's one of the things that I discovered in working with business people. Is what happens is you have someone who's they're solving a problem, and they're really good at solving people's problems, and they start this business, and they're so good at it that they grow beyond their own capacity, and they have to hire people to help them. Well, guess what? The skills for getting things done and being productive are a very different set of skills than the ones for leading people and inspiring people. So you've got people who are really good at getting things done, trying to lead others, but they haven't developed that set of skills, which is why we have to train soft skills or people skills. And people skills, we know from neuroscience that people skills have to be learned with and from other people. Technical skills are left brain, they're information. We can learn those from a book. It's really hard to learn people skills from a book. You learn those skills from someone who already has those skills, who can train them to you, because that's how the right side of your brain grows. Those heart skills that we talked about, those people skills, need to be learned from people who already have the skills. And a lot of times we think they can't be trained. Jeremy said, I don't know how to train humility. Well, I'm arrogant enough to think that I do. So, and rare leadership, a lot of the skills that are trained in there will help you learn things like humility, but they're things that have to be learned in the context of groups. So let me talk a little bit about rare leadership. What is it? Well, according to Marcus Warner, leadership is engaging people in what matters. What matters is the technical side of things, and that just depends upon the environment that you're in. It may be work, it may be home, it may be church, social clubs, or other environments. What matters is the left brain technical side of leadership. Engaging people is all about right brain relationships. And since the premise of the book is that most leadership problems are people problems, that's our focus, is in teaching leadership skills. So in Rare Leadership, Dr. Warner and Dr. Wilder simplified a number of really complex neurological concepts into 4 categories. And those categories are remain relational, act like yourself, return to joy, and endure hardship well. So how does rare leadership work? Well, let's take a closer look at all of those, and we're going to focus on enduring hardship well. But the first R is for remain relational. So leaders create engagement in what matters, but traditional leadership training has focused on left brain task-oriented training and neglected right brain relational skills. It was really management training, not leadership training. So what's the difference? Well, management is making sure things get done right, and we need to do that. We need good managers. We need to be getting things done, otherwise business won't stay in business. Leadership is making sure the right things get done. So management is making sure things get done right. Leadership is making sure the right things get done. Schedules are managed. People are led. So getting things done right is important, but the reason for getting things done right is always, always about meeting the needs of people. Think about it. I like to say, business at its best is love in action. Now, I'm not talking about business at its worst. I'm not even talking about business as we normally experience it, but business exists to serve the needs of people. If you're not serving people's needs, you're not selling anything. You have no business. So business at its best is love in action. And as Jeremy pointed out, the way to help your customers and the way to get more customers, you need to serve your employees, and so that your employees are serving your customers well. So leaders remember that the people doing the work are just as valuable as the people that they're working for. And leaders also understand that we have 2 emotional brain fuels which are very different. These are so important, and this is the slide that everybody always asks me for. So I went ahead and put this on your worksheet. But we can be motivated from a brain perspective by either fear or by joy. Understanding and growing joy is essential to growing ourselves and developing our teams. So let's take a look at the stark difference between these two brain fuels. So when we operate on fear, we tend to focus on problems, but when we operate on joy, we focus on solutions. Fear as fuel produces anxiety, whereas joy as fuel utilizes appreciation. Appreciation is such a basic skill. That's why it's the first thing I train everybody whenever we start. When we are fearful and we're motivating ourselves by fear, we tend to be pretty irritable and no fun to be around. But when we are joyful, we are thankful, and we're thankful to the people around us. Fear as fuel looks a lot like complaining, whereas joyful people solve problems. If you've ever managed people, have you ever had that one employee that every time they came into your office, you were rolling your eyes because you knew they were going to be complaining about something? And you had another employee that might come to you with the exact same problem, but they were coming because they actually wanted to help find a solution. All right, that's the difference. Are we just looking at this because we're afraid? Or are we looking at this because we want to take ownership of it and actually solve a problem and get things done? So fearful people tend to avoid responsibility and shift blame, whereas people who use joy, they own responsibility for things. Even if they didn't cause the problem, they will own the responsibility for fixing it, all right, because they're looking forward. Fear lives in the back of our brain. Fear is a survival response, and when we operate from fear or anxiety, we're looking at survival, and it's all about me, and you people don't look like people, you look more like problems, okay? So when we're back here, people aren't people, they're problems to be solved or pawns to be used. But when we're operating from joy, which lives at the front of your brain, right behind your right eyeball, people are people, we're relational, and we're trying to get things done together, okay? Fear is exhausting. We were not designed to run on fear long term. Fear is supposed to be a short-term burst of energy to help us get away from danger, but not to live on. We're meant to operate from joy, and when we're joyful, we have more energy. Have you ever had one of those days where it's like, oh my gosh, I got so much done today, and I may be tired when I get home, but it's a good tired, you know? Pete runs marathons. You know, that's a good tired. Look at what I did today, which is very different from, well, I ate a bunch of Cheetos and sat on the couch, and how can I be tired when I didn't do anything all day, right? Different kind of tired. And then finally, when people are operating and being motivated by fear, they either grab power if they feel strong, or they avoid powerful people because they feel weak and vulnerable and like they're going to get eaten, okay? Figuratively. Joyful people share power. They're the ones who are servant leaders. So servant leaders operate from joy. So as you can see, developing joy is important for motivating people. If you want to grow thriving teams, start by growing joy. All right, the A in RARE is for act like yourself. RARE leaders understand that our best work flows from our identity. And that's why my questions start with who. I love Simon Sinek, and Simon Sinek always says start with why, which is great for marketing. But after a couple of years of quoting Simon Sinek, I realized there's a deeper question, and the deeper question is who? Who am I? Who is a being question. Everything outside of that is a doing question. Well, why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing, right? So, but who is a being question. And when we act like ourselves, our doing flows from our being. So the being comes first, and when we're operating that way, when what we're doing flows out of who we are, there's a synergy. We're able to be more energetic, and we're operating from joy. So the identity center in your brain, where you know who you are and how you act like yourself, is basically it's at the top of your brain, but your brain curves around. So if my hand is your brain, as it grows, when you're in utero, it comes from the brainstem up like this, and then it curls around. So right here at the top, behind your right eyeball, that's your identity center. You may have heard it called the executive control center. It's where you make decisions if you're operating the way you're supposed to be. That part of your brain grows through joy. If you want to grow your executive control center, spend a lot of time being joyful with people. It can be up to 35% of your brain, and you grow it by being glad to be with other people. So to your brain, and this is the scientist's word, joy, to your brain, joy means I'm with someone who's glad to be with me, or I'm thinking about someone who's glad to be with me. And so that appreciation exercise we did, that gave you a little hit of joy right here, and it helps grow that identity center. So to your brain, joy means someone is glad to be with me, and that's tied to relationships. Now, when we operate from fear on a regular basis, we are actually malfunctioning. We think it's opposite. Have you ever had someone get mad at you? And you said, oh, okay, well, now I know how you really feel, right? No, that's not who we really are. Yes, occasionally we get irritated with each other, but we're acting like ourselves when we are operating from joy, and that's when we're up here. This is who we are. Who we are is not back here. This is the animal part of us. So leaders help people experience joy so that they can grow a strong identity center. That means they can do better work. That means when things get tough, they've got the emotional capacity already built up to be able to handle difficult situations. So good leaders build joy, and they help people learn who they are and how to act like themselves. Well, the second R in rare leadership is for return to joy. Now, difficulty and negative experiences are a part of life. We all have painful experiences, and we all feel them, all right? But pain is purposeful. Painful emotions are purposeful. Emotions like these, the ones that you see on the screen, were designed by God for our protection, all right? So have you ever thought of emotions as being protective? Well, they are. Some emotions were designed to protect me, all right? The most obvious one is fear. When a snake shows up, being fearful gets me away from the snake. Disgust. Ew. Disgust is that thing that tells us that thing is not life-giving. So we don't drink gasoline because we're disgusted by it, right? So those emotions protect me. Some emotions protect other people from me. Shame, healthy shame, teaches me when other people are not glad to be with me, okay? And so when I learn, and we're supposed to learn all of these, ideally between around 6 to 18 months of age. We're supposed to learn how to have these emotions and then return to joy from them. And I could get way off track and go into a lot here. But understand that these emotions are healthy, and even shame is intended to tell me how to change my behavior so that people are glad to be with me. It becomes toxic shame when instead of hearing, oh, mommy doesn't like it when I bite my sister, if I take that message and say, something's wrong with me because mommy doesn't like it when I bite my sister, there must be something wrong with me, that's when it becomes toxic. So shame is supposed to teach us what behaviors we need to change so that people are glad to be with us, all right? Leaders understand the protective purposes of these emotions, and sometimes that protective purpose can lead to conflicts. We need to grow and mature in handling these emotions in order to be able to get along with other people. And I believe that the crisis in disengagement and many of the things that are going on in our culture right now are a crisis of maturity. Because we need to mature in order to be able to relate to other people. And a lot of people are not growing up. we don't understand the stages of maturity, and we're not growing in those things. So leaders are able to handle these emotions themselves. They're able to get angry at the people who are following them and not take it out on them, or even to be angry about something else and not take it out on their people. They're able to have these emotions, handle them themselves, and they're able to help others handle their emotions. And that takes a great deal of maturity. So the E in rare leadership is for endure hardship well. So leadership isn't just about relationships, all right? Having a good time together doesn't usually require a lot of leadership. We tend to call that a party when we have a good time together. But when people are accomplishing a task, a goal, or a big dream, they have to be able to work together. So leaders are charged with helping people get things done together. So leadership requires maturity. Maturity is the ability to suffer well. And if I had more time, I'd talk to you a little bit about trauma and how our brains shut down when we experience trauma. But I may have to tell you that afterwards because I want to leave time for questions here at the end. So maturity is the ability to suffer well. Suffering well is the ability to do hard things and handle hard people. Does that sound like any great leaders that you know? Okay. So when we grow our skills to remain relational, act like ourselves, and return to joy, then we are able to endure hardship well ourselves and to help other people do that. That's leadership, and that's why the authors called it rare leadership. So let's talk a little bit more about it, enduring hardship well together. Nobody likes to suffer. Suffering can either derail us or it can strengthen us as individuals and in our teams. So as developing leaders, part of our growth process is to help others who are suffering, sometimes even while we are suffering. Suffering can derail our teams, and as we think through that rare acronym again, it can isolate us. We stop being relational. We don't like to feel vulnerable, so we avoid people just when we need each other. Suffering can switch off our relational circuits. And I'm going to talk about what that is in just a moment. We forget who we are and how to act like ourselves. And in our own pain, we can become angry and predatory or hide when others need us. And one of the things that we talk about when we train rare leadership in groups is being predators, possums, and protectors. And we don't have time to talk about that today, but that particular concept revolutionized my ability to parent and to lead people, was understanding that. And then finally, suffering can derail us by spreading negative emotions rather than returning to joy and helping others return to joy. Well, suffering can strengthen us and strengthen our teams by encouraging relationships. So when we recognize that we or others need help, we can reach out. We can ask for and offer help. We watched a movie last night. How many of you have seen The Darkest Hour about Winston Churchill? Oh my gosh, watch that movie. It is, there are so many things in there that show his growth in these different skills. But at the worst time when he was wrestling with, as do we as England give in to Hitler and engage in peace talks, or do we stand and fight? He went, for the first time ever, he went on the subway and he went and he talked to the people. He got relational and said, what do the people want? And it was because of what he heard from the people on the subway that they stood and fought. But he couldn't make that decision on his own. He had to get input. And he had to get input from people who weren't political, who didn't have their own agenda. So, great. The name of the movie is The Darkest Hour. It's about Winston Churchill. Second, suffering can strengthen us by providing an emotional workout for our group. Adversity gives us practice at acting like ourselves within the big six emotions with each other. So sometimes we will step up and do things for others that we wouldn't do for ourselves. And it's like us to work with people. The other thing we need to understand is that identity is formed in the context of relationships. So when we as individuals come into groups, that's shaping who we are, and it's helping us to determine, are we the kind of people who return to joy from these negative emotions, or are we the kind that get derailed and hide or grab power? And then finally, suffering can help strengthen us by teaching perseverance. So when we remember to give thanks in hardship and look for solutions, we become stronger. Persevering and overcoming together bonds us to one another. So here's the thing about joy. We talked about the importance of that. Sharing joy on a regular basis enables us to suffer well together. Joy is relational. It's not the same thing as happiness. So in the midst of suffering, joy is about being thankful to be together despite the circumstances. So for example, I'm from Indiana, Tornado Alley, and there were times when we had to run to the basement because there was a tornado coming. And when we were all together in the basement, we were very glad to be together. We were glad to know that we were all safe and the tornado wasn't going to get us. Were we happy about the circumstances? Absolutely not. But we were glad to be together, and so we had joy in the midst of that difficult circumstance. So joy helps us to remain relational with others, to remember who we are so we can act like ourselves even in the difficulty, and to return to joy from those upsetting emotions. Okay, gave you a whole lot of information real fast. So earlier I mentioned that our trainings are all about developing skills. So today I'm going to introduce 3 powerful leadership skills for you to begin practicing. Now you probably already use these skills, at least somewhat, but they are so important that we're going to make sure that you know how to use them well. So these are the 3 skills. Skill number 1 is appreciation. We practiced that at the very beginning when you shared your one word about someone that you appreciate. Appreciation includes thankfulness. So really, all you have to do is think of people, things, events, or places for which you're thankful. Take time to re-experience here and here in your body what it feels like. So whether it's a beautiful sunset or your sister's laugh or the warmth and taste of a good cup of coffee, stop and smell a rose, literally. Experience it. And now, let me tell you about the reason why we talk about our body. You need to feel it. So appreciation is the basis for joy building, and it does help grow your brain's identity center. So if you want to build endurance and resilience, practice appreciation. Over time, you will find yourself better able to handle stress. I did this with my kids. I had a situation with my oldest daughter at one point where we were arguing about something and she wouldn't look at me. I was like, Allison, I need you to look at me. I'm not mad, I'm not yelling, but she knew that there was a conflict, and she said, I can't look at you, and I realized that she didn't feel safe. Eye contact is huge. So I was like, okay, what do I do? And I went back to the neuroscience training I'd had and realized somehow I've got to build joy so that when she feels this conflict, she's able to stay engaged with me. So the only thing I changed was every day before I would drop her off at school, we would have this engagement, and I'm going to use you. I would look at her and say, Allison, I love you. Have a super Saturday or a magnificent Monday. I mean, but we had the eye contact. I would touch her if I could. And I was just doing a little tiny bit every day to build joy. After about 3 months, we had another argument, and she stayed engaged. And I was like, this stuff works. This is good stuff. So everything that I'm teaching you today, this is stuff that I've used in my home, in my business, and everything that we do. So it's important that you feel it in your body, because when you feel it in your body, you know that you're in this part of the brain and you're not bypassing it. If you just think about it and you don't feel it, you're bypassing the part of the brain you want to grow, and so you might as well not do it. But when you practice it, appreciation activates the vagus nerve, And that regulates breathing, heart rate, digestion, and how it feels. So when you're doing that, when you're feeling the appreciation, you know that you're in the part of the brain that you need to be in. The only other way we know how to test that is through a $3,000 brain scan, and that's kind of a hassle and very expensive. So practice appreciation and feel it. We recommend that you work up to 5 minutes a day. There is something magic when in skills building about 5 minutes. Your brain, something kicks in your brain when you can do something for 5 minutes at a time. So like riding a bike, they've seen that for people who are learning how to ride a bike, when they can keep going for 5 minutes, they've got it. They know how to do it. Same thing with these skills. So you may be surprised how hard it is to spend 5 minutes at one time practicing appreciation. So if you start and you feel like, you know what, this isn't working, I get distracted, other things pop into my head. Start with a minute. And then the next day try to do 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. And after about a week, you'll be able to work yourself up to 5 minutes. So practice utilizing your appreciation muscle. And then if you want to completely reset your brain, do 5 minutes at a time, 3 times a day for a month. And that resets your brain to a new normal of joy rather than anxiety. Okay, I'm going to keep it moving. I keep wanting to stop and tell stories, which are wonderful, but I want to make sure that we have time to do questions. So you've practiced appreciation, you've had that experience. The next thing we're going to do is tell joy stories. And this is another way to practice appreciation, but it's a very specific way to do it that activates 4 levels. It really activates your whole brain. So there's 4 levels on the right and 1 on the left, and we're going to use all of those. So why do we explicitly teach how to tell stories, all right? Everybody knows how to tell a story, but how useful and helpful are the stories that we normally tell? So have you ever been with someone who just got lost in the details of their story, and by the time, they just sort of wandered around and didn't go anywhere? Have you ever started to tell a story and then forgotten why you were doing it? There was a reason, and I do this, I still do this. So stories are a very powerful tool for leaders, and we want to practice telling compelling, purposeful stories that help you to grow and that help your team to grow. So here are the guidelines I want to give you. They're on your worksheet there. First of all, make eye contact whenever you can. Now, if you're on the phone or on a video conference, this won't work, but if you're live and in person, breathe the same air with the person and make eye contact with them. Be expressive. Don't be monotone, because then you're putting people to sleep. And be expressive. Use your body. Use your facial expressions. Briefly tell what happened. Okay? You're not in a court. We don't need all the details. The idea is you're trying to accomplish something with someone. You're trying to help them experience joy, or we use this as the basis for a more advanced skill is return to joy stories. And then tell how you feel, both emotionally and physically, what happened in your body. And then why did it matter? Did it lift your mood, or did it do something helpful for you? So, so let me give you an example, because I'm going to have all of you practice this in just a moment. You're going to pair up and practice. So I told you earlier about my daughter Reagan, right? So I am so thankful for my daughter Reagan and the fact that she cooks dinner for us. And when I get home in the evenings and I can smell dinner cooking and all I have to do is set the table, I have such a sense of relief. I exhale, my muscles relax, and I'm able to be home instead of at the office. And so Reagan brings me joy by the simple act of cooking dinner for us every night. Okay? So how did I do? Did I follow make eye contact? Can't do everybody, but was I expressive? You can nod, you can, okay. Was I brief? Okay. You should be able to tell a joy story in 2 minutes or less, okay? Anything longer than 2 minutes, you may be losing your audience. So 2 minutes or less to tell a joy story. Did I talk about how I felt Emotionally and physically? Now you and then why it matters. Okay, so I'm going to have you pair up and tell joy stories, but first, there's another skill that we need to focus on, and that's listening. Now, why do I have to teach people how to listen? Well, let me tell you. Listening is a lost art, all right? Have you ever been to a concert at your child or your grandchild's school lately? Audiences don't know how to listen. So in our fast-paced, technology-soaked culture, many people are moving too fast and they're too distracted to really listen. So we're actually going to talk about how to do that. Slow down and listen to one another. So leaders pay attention to people and take this opportunity to practice listening. So here's how to do it. You want to maintain eye contact, have an open and attentive posture, be present. Please avoid the temptation to think about other things. You know, you don't have to think about what you're doing later. You can think about that later, right? Be expressive even in your listening, right? You can lean forward and nod, and counselors call it minimal encouragers. It's those things where you go, mm-hmm, or oh, you know, those noises that you make that let people know that you're listening. And then comment or question appropriately. So if you struggle to stay focused when you're listening to somebody, one of the things you can do is task yourself with asking a question about what they said. So if you know that, all right, I'm going to need to ask them a question about this, then you're more focused on what it is that they're saying. Okay? So let's practice. All of you, most of you are in pairs with your table. I may ask the back person and the front person to come together, because I'm going to give you 4 minutes. So you get 2 minutes each to share your joy story, and you've already thought of what it is. Okay? What?
I had to choose.
No, you're here.
Okay.
I'm going to have the lady in blue back there come up here. Can you come up with this lady? Okay. All right, hold on. So you've already thought of your joy story because it's the person you thought of earlier today. So tell your person, use the guidelines, and talk about that person that you appreciate and why you appreciate them. Okay? Ready, set, go. Okay. All right. All right. Oh, 10 to 11 a.m. Okay, if you haven't switched, wrap up the first person, and now it's the second person's turn. You're all done. Okay.
Less than 2 minutes.
Awesome. All right. Okay, so So wrap up your stories. All right. How was that? Good? Got through it? Did you do everything right? All right. I thought we had until 11:10, but we only have until 11. So real quick, does anybody have any questions about anything we talked about today? All right. Can I go home with you? Sorry. I only go home with him. Okay. So, I did not write that book. I helped with it, but I didn't. My name is not on the cover. So, all right. Real quick, today I just wanted to review. We talked about who, why, how, and what. I gave you a rare overview. We practiced some skills, and I want to challenge you to look at these skills and say, okay, what am I going to practice from here on out? Because what happens is we come to these seminars and we learn a lot of new stuff, and it's great, and then we take it home and stick our folder someplace. What are you going to keep practicing today? I taught you 3 skills. Which one are you going to work on? Yes, ma'am. Yes, awesome. 5 minutes a day, awesome. Okay. Yep.
I can do the 5 minutes a day.
Yep. And if that's harder than you like, I actually developed an entire 30-day program called the Joy Reset Project. So contact us. We're not currently running that, but we can if we get enough people. All right, I want to tell you about opportunities real quick that we have upcoming. We are doing Rare Leadership Groups. We have a 10-month program. You can meet online or in person, where we will train you in leadership skills and go into much more depth than we did here today. If you're interested in that, let us know, or on the back of your sheet, it talks about how to register for that. Learning to listen to God. I wrote a book called Strategic Business Prayer. And so my passion is helping people to connect with God in a way that they can understand His purposes and plans for their life. I'd love to see you at one of those workshops. Or if you run an organization that you would like to do something like that, let's talk. And then Created and Called. Again, that's about God's purposes and plans. So lots of things going on. We do have books for sale. If you're interested, right out here, you can see this handsome gentleman at the front of the room. All right. Thank you all for coming.